In the early 1980s, when AIDS-related infections became more and more frequent, Frida Wagman's son, Gary, who lived in San Francisco, informed her of a medical journal article he had read. It told of an infection which seemed, at the time, to be affecting only gay men. Gary sent her a copy of this article with his notation,
"Nothing to worry about, just for your information."
Soon it was something to worry about when Gary told his mother that he had been diagnosed with that very condition. In time, the virus causing this and other rare infections became known as HIV and was the precursor to acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS. Frida immediately joined a group in her community to help people who were ill with this new phenomenon in order to learn all she could to prepare herself for what her son might have to live with or die from. During the following 12 years, while she monitored Gary's health, Frida met a multitude of people who were already near the end stage of their lives. The hands-on care became more and more intense as the caseload increased. It was during those years that the author learned the full meaning of close and personal relationships, how and what to speak to someone who has lost all of their ability to care for themselves. Maintaining their dignity was of the utmost importance, and the experience transformed her into a more understanding and compassionate person. This book tells of those learning experiences by focusing on some of the individuals Miss Wagman helped for brief periods because, as the title implies, they only came into her life at the end stage of theirs. Thus, each of their stories is a snippet of the total message of the book. During those years, Ms. Wagman spent Gary's vacation time with him, traveling to foreign countries and exploring California, Nevada, and Oregon, each time noting the subtle changes in Gary's health from one year to the next. He preferred to live his life as he had known it before HIV and asked his mother to do the same. But at the end, she was with him and recounts the emotional and touching goodbye in Davies Medical Center in San Francisco, California. For more information, or to get your very own copy of this award-winning book, Snippets from the Trenches, a mother's AIDS memoir by author Frida Wagman, please visit her website at www.snippetsfromthetrenches.com. That's www.snippetsfromthetrenches.com. Manifestation is driven by imagination, intent, and passion. In our culture, all three have been distorted and disabled by modern media and exploitation. Re-engage your imagination and your passion by entering into the world of paranormal romance. Kahir O'Donnell takes her readers on an exciting journey into the endless possibilities of loving, passionate, and mutually respectful male-female relationship. Her latest book, The Long Dark Night, features special ops adventure, a daring rescue, a psychic woman from the stars, and a special agent that will die to protect her. The Long Dark Night by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at kahiraodonnell.com or amazon.com. With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, and our website, xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is a gentleman I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years. MICHEL is a former MUFON member and former provincial section director for Sudbury, Ontario. Since July 1974, he has had 27 separate UFO sightings, including 2 captured on video. He's appeared on numerous radio and television programs, including Midday Q in the North, MCTV Today, Volt, The Camilla Scott Show on CTV, just to name a few. He's also been featured in the local press, which includes the Sudbury Star, the Northern Life, La Banda, that's the Laurentian University publication, the Cambrian Shield, let me see, the South Side Story. He's contributed valuable information into American researcher Jan Aldrich's Project 1947, which earned him an acknowledgement of his work in Jan's book. Let me see. He continues to inform the public about UFOs and flying saucers by lecturing on the subject and has written several letters to the editor about his and other people's eyewitnesses' account. He also wrote a few articles that have appeared in the Canadian Ufologist, a MUFON Ontario's newsletter, which is now defunct. His expertise lies in researching Northern Ontario newspaper archives for UFO reports and UFO-related information. Joining me now is Michel Deschamps. And Michel, bienvenue à la X-Zone.
Hi, Rob.
How's it going, Mike?
It's pretty good.
Wow,
pretty good.
You're still having sightings.
Myself, not as much, but I'm trying to stay on top of the story. I recently met an older guy who actually been videotaping UFOs off of his balcony.
My gosh.
And we're trying to weed out drones, with LED lights. Mm-hmm. The stuff he's filming is too bright and too large, even at the distance that he's filming these from, to be drones with LED lights. But he's filming stuff that's pretty unusual in very, very bright colors that you normally don't find on aircraft, like
wow.
like bright purples, bright pinks, almost like crystal blues, and yeah.
They're definitely not aircraft navigation lights.
No, not in the configuration that they're being recorded as. And a lot of times the object are leaving the area away from his eyes, and we don't have any aircraft that have bright lights on the back end aiming at the eyewitness's eyes as they're leaving. The lights usually, especially landing gear lights, those are usually come on only when the aircraft is landing, and you're usually facing the front. So if you're looking at an object leaving your visual range of sight, more likely it's something other than an aircraft, because they don't have. I mean, you might notice the wingtip lights flashing off and on as the airplane is getting away from you, but you won't see like one single bright spot of white or amber or pink still within view,
Michael, for our listeners who may not have had the opportunity of hearing you before on the X-Zone, what got you interested into UFO research, and how long have you been doing this research now?
Actually, it started at age 10. It's a question that's often asked of me. What precipitated my interest? Was it a sighting, or was it the actual topic itself? It's kind of a little bit of both, because I'd had a sighting when I was 9, but that wasn't confirmed until many years later. And when I was 10, in 1975, there was a show on TV called Project UFO.
Oh, yeah.
Which was airing at the time. And that's when I first heard the term flying saucer. And I said, well, if I'm going to pick a topic I'm going to study in depth, why not make it UFOs? And I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. And let me tell you, over the years, I found out that I sometimes feel like I've bit off more than I could chew.
How many sightings? You've had 27 sightings yourself. And were they all different sightings, or was it the same craft, the same trajectory, the same location, or were they all different?
No, they were different in appearance as well.
Okay.
A lot of times it's a single source of light, but it's the way that it behaved. That, like I said, when it's moving away from your eyes, there shouldn't be any lights, facing you at all. If it's a plane, the lights are usually aimed the other way. So there'd be like a single sort of source of light that would be just like disappearing in the clouds, but it would be too fast, or it would just disappear too soon than it normally would if you were able to trace an airplane in the sky with your eyes. A lot of times the sighting was the back end or what was left of somebody else's sighting, and then they would get me on the phone and say, if you go outside now, you'll see something. And sure enough, I a couple of times I actually got to see what was seen before over Sudbury. I would catch it in Hanmer, because I lived at that time. I lived like 20 miles north of Sudbury, and so if I got a call to say whether something was heading my direction, if I wasn't too lazy to get dressed and go outside, sure enough, I actually saw something once or twice like that. They all look different. The one sighting that impressed me the most, of which I've made some sketches on my website, is the one that took place at the radar base, which is no longer in existence. They not too long ago, they actually destroyed all the buildings because too many vandals were going up there, and it was getting dangerous. And, it was like my Mecca. You'd go up there and you'd get a good view of the valley, and whatever took place there in 1990, I think they were. My impression was that the UFOs were checking to see why was the radar base no longer operating, and it had been closed since 86, 87. And I sketched the 3 different stages in which the object looked different when I first saw it. It looked different the second time I saw it from a different location. And the third and last location, it was a big pinkish reddish light that was pulsating irregularly like a heartbeat. And it was hovering right where the base was located, even though I couldn't see. The base wasn't lit up at that time. It had no lights on, but the street lights along the highway would indicate exactly where the base was. And this thing was, to my mind, investigating why the radar base was no longer functioning.
Fascinating. Michael, during your research, what is the earliest documented sighting that you discovered?
When I started doing the research at Laurentian University is where I found most of the newspapers on microfilm. I went as far back as the 1800s. The Sudbury Journal goes that far back, but I didn't really find anything. I was looking for airship sightings of the day during the 1896, 1897 flap of the airship sightings. Then I came across, by pure luck, an incident in 1914 and a second one in 1916 where an object with a light on, flying at night, was following the railroad tracks into Sudbury from a place called Warren, and one telegraph operator would contact the next one over, telling him that this object was coming down the line. And we had nothing flying at that time. The first official flight anywhere by any airplane in Ontario at that time was in 1919, 3 years later to 1916. So that really impressed me. And those are the two earliest clippings that I was able to find.
During your research, Mike, have you ever found any physical trace evidence?
In 1991, I heard of a case of a landing on Manitoulin Island near a place called Spring Bay, where in mid-September of 1990, two donut-shaped, I couldn't tell indentations really, because it was a surface of hard limestone covered with 3/4-inch gravel layer. Well, the two donut-shaped areas is where the gravel used to be, and it was blown off, leaving these two donut shapes. And somebody says, well, maybe somebody with a three-wheeler tried to do something, whatever, and create a hoax, whatever. But the odd thing was, it wasn't next to the well-traveled road. This was a 1/4 mile into the bush on somebody's private property, which also served as for some reason, a gravel pit. But there's no gravel pit there because we're talking like a hard surface limestone with gravel on top, and not much of a gravel pit like you're accustomed to, where it's dug right into the ground. And I was surprised to see these two circles were like 16 feet from center to center. And after talking with Ted Phillips out of Missouri, who was the leading authority, still is to this day, about landing cases, we surmised that there was two separate objects that landed, possibly one in the aid, coming to the aid of another, or both exploring the area at the same time. And that impressed me a lot. And it's not the first incident of a landing case that I've heard from, not just the Manitoulin area, but also where I grew up in Hanmer and other places near the Sudbury area.
Are UFO sightings on the increase in your area, Mike, or are they on the decrease?
That's tough to say, because some years it seems really, really good, like especially if you go based by the news clippings. Some years it's completely dead, like there's nothing, no mention, no clipping, whatever. And some years, like 1952, 1967, it was just like nonstop. Nowadays, it seems that the landings seems to have translated into the crop circle phenomena. We don't hear too many cases of landings or occupant sightings, although I just found out that there was 3 such cases in Quebec within the last 3 to 4 years. I don't know. I believe nationwide the sightings are on an increase. It could be that, or it could be that more people are now opening their eyes and being made more aware that these things are occurring, with everything happening online with the Disclosure Project or the X conferences. I mean, people, and Hangar One, the UFO Files, new TV show, put out by MUFON using their case files. I think people are getting more aware, so it could be just a matter of people registering more sightings than the sightings themselves being on an increase. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's on an increase. It's definitely not on a decrease, but sometimes it seems to be a competition between BC and Ontario as to which of the province gets the highest amount of sightings per year.
Michel, do you think there's a connection between crop circles and UFOs?
Not UFOs per se, but definitely some kind of intelligence. The evidence seems to indicate that the patterns are created within seconds, and that some of the effects that are left behind could not be reproduced by man, let's say, We're talking about tractor engines being shut off, cell phones being unable to work within the crop circles, but as soon as they walk out of the crop circle, the cell phone suddenly comes back to life. Animals being weary about walking into a pattern, or people feeling different energies and using it to sort of meditate as well. These are all side effects of the crop circles that seem to indicate to me that a good majority of them are made by some type of intelligence, whether they are underground or coming from outer space. You'll find the telltale signs of human hoaxing if you go around. The plants are kinked or damaged, whatever, and really not really good for harvesting. But the actual patterns themselves, they still get harvested after the so-called crop circle season is over.
Have we had crop circles in Ontario?
I've heard of a few cases down south, especially in a place called Amherstburg, near Windsor, in 1994, although the RCMP pretty well chalked it off to saying it was vandals that did it, and yet in some of the other cases, I believe they found a squished rat in that particular incident, and it reminded me of a pattern they had found in Manitoba, where they had found a squished porcupine, where the quills had been found in the same spiraling motion as how the crop circles are usually formed. Ontario would not too many. I'm surprised because we do have a lot of crop fields, perfect canvas for these things, but I don't get too many reports.
No. How about alien abductions? They used to be very popular going back to the, I'd say the mid-'90s.
Yeah. Well, I was told from my colleagues in Toronto, I was made aware a few years back when I was with Newfound Ontario that there were at least 5 separate cases of abductions in and around Toronto area. I myself have a friend. She's First Nation. She lives in near Manitoulin Island, and although she's in her 60s now, I don't believe she's still getting contact. She could be. I was a little bit not skeptical, but suspicious the first time I met her. But we've had sightings since we've gotten together, and I've driven out there, and I'm actually planning on sky watching there in August. There's a place where the First Nation people stay on one side of the lake, and on the other side of the lake as well, the so-called little people reside when they're there.
My goodness.
So it should be interesting. And also what I found out coming back from the Blind River area is that there's also Bigfoot country there. Bigfoot's also been seen by her sister, who lives in Ironbridge. And so you have a gamut of different phenomena taking place in more or less the same area. So, and she's an abductee, like I said. She's had previous experiences, but I don't know. I think at a certain point, the old are no longer, like, people are getting too old. I guess there is no need for genetic material gathering from older folks. But abduction cases themselves, I think they're still occurring. It's just people are reluctant, and it's no question, and people are reluctant to come forward with that because if they haven't been familiarized with the UFO phenomenon by now, they probably think, and I've heard this many times, that it's only happening to them. So they're not willing to come out and risk their careers, risk their reputation, their standing in the community to come out and willingly admit that they're being taken.
When you interview people, you go on your investigations, have you found a common thread with the people who have actually had sightings, Michael? Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
All right. When you go out and you interview someone who has had a sighting, and then you go and you interview someone else who's had another sighting, are there any similar traits or similarities in the people, let's say their beliefs, their psychological profiles? Do you see any similarities?
Well, I do find that sometimes they're extremely shocked that this is happening more than what they've been led to believe that it's happening. They have the same reactions. Very few times I've actually met people where they looked upon it as being sort of like a religious experience where they took it in for themselves.
Right.
They appreciated it. Other people are kind of totally. Their lives are totally turned upside down. Like this particular lady in Quebec, for instance, who had a sighting just across the street over a neighbor's house. She saw this huge triangular object with 4 red spots, like just shining straight down, like in vertical columns of red light. And it screwed her entire life up. And so people have different reactions. I have so far I haven't really done a lot of field work. I usually talk to people over the phone. Sometimes it's long distance too, so you can only do so much then.
Sure.
Too. But it's fascinating. It's kind of funny because I snicker sometimes because I've had so many sightings and I've studied this for so many years that to hear somebody who thinks that this is happening for the very first time, it's almost like, and how they get so expressive about their sighting. It's almost like seeing a sighting for the first time through child's eyes. It's like really, really fascinating at the same time. And then they feel kind of reassured once you've told them that this has happened many times before.
Do you think, Michel, that there is a government cover-up, there is a government conspiracy to holding back the truth about UFOs and ETs from the public?
Yeah, there's no question about it whatsoever. I have no doubts there. I wasn't sure of this when I was younger, but once I started purchasing some of the documents, which were now freely available online, you can see that there has to be something behind it. I don't see the government wasting the X amount of money producing so many documents for something that is not real. So if you read some of the FBI documents or the Canadian documents, what people are describing is so out of the norm that they cannot fall into the category of being just ordinary aircraft. And so if this is, and the government, well, knowing as much, if not a little bit more than what we researchers do, basically figure that this is a national security issue and that they might as well just cover it up. I don't think it's just that. I think the reason why they're possibly covering it up is even if they've managed a little bit or a lot to back engineer the technology that's been recovered from several UFO crash sites, then it's worth it more for them to keep it secret because they have their hands on super advanced technology that they could or could not be able to duplicate, that they don't want the rest of the world to know about. And I think that's a disservice to the rest of the people in making them believe that there's nothing to this, that you must be psychiatric and or you have an imbalance in your psychology, right, and you're just imagining things. I think it's because you got people coming to you after that and saying that they saw a UFO and you couldn't talk to anybody else because they would automatically assume that they were nuts. And I wouldn't want to have a little kid, coming home from school, having witnessed a landed UFO with 2 small occupants, come home and then tell their parents the story, and then their parents telling them, "Oh, you're just crazy. You haven't seen that. It's just imagining things." It's the whole stigma that the result. It's the reaction you get as a result of being lied to for all these years. So, the cover-up, I don't know what makes them think that they can keep the secret forever. It's like a boiling pot on the stove. They can try and sit on the lid as much as they want, but the pot is boiling over with yearly increase in sightings, and who knows what's around the next corner? What is the next Phoenix Lights event going to be like? if this one here back in 97 was witnessed by 10,000 people, maybe the next sighting over will be witnessed by 100,000 people or 1 million. We don't know what's around the corner. So I personally think the government's extremely stupid in thinking that they can pull this off for much longer. I mean, it's going to start busting at the seams, and it already has. I mean, we got whistleblowers coming out, thank God. So I still have hope that the truth will, just like in the murder case, the truth has a way of making it back up to the surface.
Right. In all the years you've been doing UFO research, Michel, what has been the strangest or the most compelling UFO case that you yourself have done research on?
Well, I suppose, well, the more fascinating one, of course, having been brought up in Sudbury since we moved here from Quebec in '68. I think it was the 1975 flyover of Strategic Air Command bases, four military installations in the States, and the one installation in Canada, of all places, happened to have been here. The famous or infamous Canadian Forces Station, Falconbridge, and we lived fairly close to that place, and you knew. Like at that time, I don't even remember the sirens going off. I was in the 6th grade,
right? And
years later, I had people telling me that they heard the sirens going off. Eventually, through doing research, I found out that F-106 interceptors had flown in from Michigan so low that it shattered windows from houses all the way down. And of course the UFOs had been long gone before then. I don't know what took them so long to have these jets screaming in from Michigan, even though they could fly at 500 miles per hour. The UFOs are much faster, because one of my witnesses actually described how he had spoken to the radar base back in the day, and they described an object leaving the area at 22,000 miles an hour.
Wow.
So we don't have anything like that, not even to this day.
Yeah.
And so that's the more impressive. And what was even more impressive was 2 years later, I got a phone call from the radar tech, whose job it was to fix or look at the radar system to make sure it was operating properly. And he says what they picked up was a solid return. It was not clouds or weather propagation, as he would say. This was the so-called aircraft carrier type, which he said was more likely hovering over the town of Lively between 42,000 and 72,000 feet, while these 4 other smaller craft, 40 feet in diameter, would be seen while one was hovering over a nursing home, witnessed by nursing staff, and police officers were some of the first witnesses as well. One of the objects branched off and followed a family back home to Chelmsford, and the other 2 objects, I'm not sure exactly where they were. But getting that, and what I did was I didn't get the guy's permission, but I set my tape recorder, and I do not regret to this day having taped what he said to me on the phone about the radar, about the fact that it was functioning properly, that these things were solid returns, and that MP3 is on my website. And so the radar, the 1975 flyover of military installations, including the Canadian Forces Falconbridge Station, is one of my favorite cases. But there's also the Stephen Michelak case out of Manitoba, where the guy got burnt on his chest by a landed UFO just before it departed, and he's one of the very few cases like that people have been injured by UFOs, but were never able to get their medical records so that they could get treatment for whatever afflicted them.
Michael, do you think that these occupants, whoever they are, they mean any harm to this planet or to humanoids?
I personally don't think so, although there's a few cases that I've heard of human mutilation, which kind of correlates with the animal mutilation syndrome. But I think that if they were in majority evil or intent to harming us, we have seen signs of it by now. I mean, by no means are we ever able to completely defend ourselves from these guys. So whether they have the ability to go back in time and get us at a time where we're less weaponized than we're now, or try to do something now, we'd see signs of this. We definitely see signs. So I think most of them are benevolent. They possibly, to me, I think that they have more value for life than we do. I mean, after all, we've killed how many millions of people between World War I and World War II of our own species.
And we're still killing them.
Pardon me?
I said, and we're still killing.
Well, we're still killing, yeah. And we dare to call ourselves civilized. Maybe we'd be better off. Well, the aliens seem to be lacking emotions, which we have lots of, but it doesn't seem to have made us a better species. We're supposed to be caretakers of this planet, and we've done a really lousy job. There is times when I wish they could just do away with humans and take over the planet. Maybe they'd do a better job of reclamating it and bring it back to its pristine self of what it used to be before we came along.
Why do you think the ETs are here?
At first I thought, well, explorers, and I still think that even to this day, there's probably some that are making it here for the very first time. Unlike the repeat offenders, as I call them, the ones that perform the abductions. They've been here for quite a while. I believe that the abductions themselves is a way of them monitoring their creations. I think they had a hand in our creation, or they tweaked us over time, which sort of, in a really, really bad way for us, because we'd like to believe we have free will. I think it gives them free access to gather us whenever they need genetic material for whatever purpose. We don't know what it is. I'm sure it's not like supermarket type where they're just coming down to kill us, to eat us.
Right.
I think it's a matter of survival, and maybe they've had no choice. Maybe they've gone through more wars than we have, and because of the way they look so emancipated, maybe they've had to go outside of their own personal race to mix and match genes so they can prolong their existence even if they lost purity of the race. And if they're able to do that, with medical techniques that we don't have, well, I don't see why not. And if they had a hand in our creation, well, it would be really hard for us to accept that and swallow our pride and say, well, okay, they helped us. They helped bringing us to what we are today for whatever purpose, whether it was for even trades, or if it's just something, one-sided trade route where they take genetic material from us, but we're not getting much from them. And that includes technology and knowing how to use it. We may not even be ready for advanced technology because we're advanced already technologically, but we're not very advanced sociology. So like,
sure.
Even spiritually, we're not advanced enough to handle the whole thing. So.
Do you think there's only one race visiting this planet, or are there a variety of different alien races coming here? Well,
and a former military man by the name of Clifford Stone once says in the States that the military has cataloged 57 species. I've cataloged 85 species.
Wow.
I've looked for several books to see what people had reported as occupants, and I had to separate it so there would be a distinction between the two. I separated the regular sightings of close encounters of the third kind, the sighting of the occupants, aside from the ones that are performing the abductions. It seems to be like a lot of them are the first-time comers. They come here and they're never seen again. There's a few races or small beings, white-clad, in white uniforms that have been seen once or twice. They kind of look similar, like a case in Grand-Mère, Quebec, back in '98, to some of the cases in 1968. Simonton, I forget which state, but they had offered this guy a wafer-looking biscuit or something. Those beings kind of look similar, but overall, I think there's a lot of them that have come here, and some just do a pit stop, pick up a few plant samples, possibly animal samples, And then there's the ones that are seem to have a more vested interest in our existence.
Michel, you and I have to take a short break. Please stand by with us. Exonation, Michel Deschamps is our special guest. Michel, what's your website address?
My website address is www.newforce.com. Basically, Newforce stands for, it's the first letter of the following words: Northern Ontario UFO Research and Study. So NOUFORS, Newforce.
All right, Exonation, check it out, www.newforce.com or net?
.com.
Michel Deschamps is going to be back with us on the other side of this commercial break as we continue talking about UFOs, ETs, crashes, and much more. After all, this is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. until midnight, right here on the Starcom Radio Network. We'll be back on the other side of this short set of breaks. Don't go away.
Energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464. Are you considering calling a psychic to read your situation? Then consider David Champion, a psychic medium for more than 20 years with thousands of ratings under his belt. David Champion will make you feel comfortable. He has proven to be honest and accurate. He's a straight shooter. There's no guesswork. What he sees is what you get. While he is a medium, most of the calls focus on relationships, not only love, but work, school, neighbors, and more. Need help with finding a job and preparing for the interview? Are you dealing with people who are obstacles in your path? For more information, go to davidchampion.com, $1.50 per minute paid by credit card with a minimum of 30 minutes. For your reading with David Champion, call 1-877-702-8598. That's 1-877-702-8598.
Fartlets, fartlings, pongies, and honkers. They have so many names, makes you go bonkers. Rear tempest, butt bubbles, bottom burps, all aside. Why does it smell like a little rat died? Hail the fart, whenever, wherever, whoever. Its existence actually enriches our lives because it gives us those unforgettable moments that we can all recall again and again that are always good for yet another laugh. A new expose on farting. Get your copy of The Endearing Fart by Eileen Dover at www.theendearingfart.com. Unwilling to be the government's deadly assassin, gifted psychic Kahara Mitchell went AWOL and ended up buried under rubble in the wake of a great tsunami. She regained consciousness far from Earth on the medical ship of a Dagaronian intergalactic fleet. Has she been rescued or abducted by aliens? The Chalice of Carrie, Kahira O'Donnell's latest paranormal science fiction romance, is the passionate story of an Earth woman and her destined mates, twin kings from another galaxy. Kahara uses her gifts fighting alongside Lords Rom and Ra in a war that will determine the destiny of galaxies. The Chalice of Kari by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at KahiraO'Donnell.com or at Amazon.com.
My name is Michael Telstar, Canada's leading mentalist from Toronto, Ontario.
Hi, my name is Sponza, and you're listening to my dad, Ron McConnell, on the X-Zone.
This is Psychic Dorothy from St. Catharines, and you're listening to Rob McConnell.
Hello, my name is Holly Reeves, an astrologer from Astro For You, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X-Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Welcome to The X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Michel Deschamps is our special guest of this hour, X-Zone Nation, www.noufors.com. And Michel, it's always great talking to you, my friend. So when did you leave MUFON?
In 2010, actually. Due partly to my frustration about the lack of education, like the fact that they weren't doing anything with their case files. It seemed to me anyways, like that their mandate was like they wanted to solve the UFO mystery for themselves, seems like, and they sat on a lot of cases, and I'm not like that at all, because I figured why bitch at people if they're not on the same page, if you're not willing to share the information that will put them on the same page.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I've noticed that over the years that everybody wants to have the smoking gun and solve the UFO, or find the evidence, solve the problem, have the smoking gun, get all the glory, and it's not going to work that way.
No, and this phenomenon is multifaceted. As I'm finding out, people say, "Well, what if they're interdimensional?" Well, that's given us even a harder time to actually put a physical finger on it, because then you're putting it in the realm of the non-physicality or being able to phase in and out of our existence. I mean, let's deal with the physical evidence first, the landing cases, the solid structured craft that people have kicked, punched, touched, and then the other reason why I got out of MUFON was actually just a typo, because there was a problem with the renewal fee. And it seemed to me that the price had been jacked up so high that I just couldn't believe it. So I just said, well, I can't afford this. So I just let it go. And then I found out it was a typo. And I kind of missed the monthly journal, because they did have some really good case files on there. But other than that, I mean, we weren't, I think MUFON Ontario had, it's been defunct now. And I think people have gone to the wayside because they were dissatisfied on how MUFON or ufology in general was just either too much into themselves, and I think I've done greater strides becoming an independent, and plus having 27 plus sightings under the belt kind of helps too, because a lot of these researchers, possibly the same as with those hoaxers on YouTube, they've never had a sighting, so they are not really familiar with what it is that they're looking for. Just like hoaxers are producing all kinds of things on YouTube because they've never seen anything. If they were to see something, first of all, they'd realize, well, okay, we got to stop doing all this fakery stuff, because there's enough real stuff to go around 10,000 times over without having to produce fake CGI UFOs and stuff being pursued by jets or whatever. And for MUFON, well, maybe it took a while, but finally with this Hangar 1 UFO Files show, people get to finally see all the case files, or some of the case files. I mean, it all depends also on ratings, because the show could be canceled tomorrow. Yeah. Right now they're discussing about how whether or not they don't have anything planned for season 3. They just finished season 2. And I said to them, just like I wrote a letter to the History Channel, forget about this other reality TV crap. Put this stuff on, focus on this, because if you were to do a poll or a survey, I would be willing to bet 100-1 that the majority of the people around this planet are very, very interested in the paranormal, any branch of the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
And the question we've been asked, amongst the top 3 or 4 questions we've been asking ourselves for years, are we alone in the universe? And it's undeniably no. We are not alone, never have been, never will be. And so I say, put the stuff on TV. Whether or not the ratings are good, they'll pick up on their own, because people will then realize that they've been lied to. And then once that is made clear, then there's going to be an upswell of people coming up behind the ones that are already in the know, or believing, whatever word you want to use. I don't like the word believer. I wish there was. I consider myself a knower, because I've seen UFOs.
Right.
When you believe in something, you're strictly going based on faith, because you have not seen. It's like, I've never seen Jesus Christ, so I have to believe in him or his existence. But I've seen UFOs. I know they're real. And I've never seen the occupants, but I know people here in town who have seen the occupants. So that's a given. But that's what I say. I say, there's got to be something done about educating people, and it was one of the reasons why I bowed out of MUFON.
You were saying that there are cases where people have kicked and punched UFOs?
Oh, there's cases where there's a small, well, he's not a child anymore, but in 1966, just outside of Hamilton, a boy by the name of Charles Cousin actually touched one of two cylindrical shaped objects that had landed. They're both the size of coffins, I guess, or a little bit bigger than that. And one had an antenna, and the kid touched the antenna and burnt his hand. You have the case of Stephen Michelak, where he ran his hand on the hull of the ship, and thank God he was wearing gloves, because his gloves started to melt. Sometimes the saucer is completely ice cold, and some other cases is completely warm to the touch. And so you have to be careful when approaching these objects. Just recently, John Burroughs, who's one of the eyewitnesses to the Rendlesham Forest, was able to undergo surgery for his heart, because it was finally admitted by the UK government that UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, which is another term for UFOs, actually were direct, the main reason why he had been injured, and because he was in close proximity to this object. And so it's not something I would approach, like people kind of laughing, tongue in cheek, and say, oh yeah, if I saw a landed UFO, I'd go on board and whatever. I wouldn't be so quick to do that, because I've heard of cases of landing sites where I haven't encountered any of these, but there's sometimes a radiation where the soil is totally dehydrated, or nothing, no plant life will actually grow back for several years. I've heard of a few cases like that on Manitoulin Island, as a matter of fact. So you have to be very, very careful. This is not a question of jokes. I mean, people have touched objects, or they've been touched by objects. They've been zapped. In Brazil, people have been burnt to the point of almost melting like candles, because a green beam would be aimed at the person, and the green beam would hold him down, and then the red beam would come out and burn the person to a crisp in front of his wife. You'll hear reports where smokers won't even go outside anymore in Brazil and the Amazon jungle, because as soon as they light up a cigarette, it seems like the UFOs will descend right out of the sky. And that's another whole ball game right there. It says you got different races. It seems that there's 3 or 4 factions of beings that have divvied up the planet into sectors. And in Europe, you have the Nordic-looking ones that are more human-looking, that seem to conglomerate over there. In the States and Canada, you've got the small grays, sometimes going up to 5 feet and so many inches. In South America, you've got the reptilian types, which are more aggressive. So you don't even know what the hell is going on, and who's in charge of who, whether it's abduction cases or just where are the UFOs pinpointed to go say, you guys land here, you guys land there, and we stay here. It's such a large story, multifaceted, that sometimes we don't know which way is up and which way is down. That's why you can't get a clear-cut idea of what's going on. So anybody claiming that they know this species and that species and what they eat for supper and how their kids are made to grow up, you know those people are BSing. They're full of crap, because we don't know the answers to those questions. Anybody claiming that they know the Dragonians, and they got all these names that they've picked out of science fiction films to name all the races. It's ludicrous.
Michel, my final question for you tonight is about Roswell. What do you think happened in Roswell, New Mexico, July 1947?
I think an extraterrestrial vehicle of some type crashed, and either crashed or collided with another object. And one object crashed practically intact at another location, and then this one that blew up in pieces, the escape pod or the bodies were found at a third location not too far from the main debris field. And people will ask, well, why New Mexico? Why do you think there's so many crashes there? Well, in 1945, 46, 47, the only place on this planet where you would find radar technology, rocket technology, and atomic technology was right there. The only spot. Now, if we were to find another planet, the first thing we'd be looking for is signs of civilization, of course, but also the reason why, for instance, why the UFOs come to Sudbury is because I've recently asked again the question, are we still considered the nickel capital of the world? And apparently we are. Second is Russia, I believe, in nickel production. So the mine sites here is what seems to attract UFOs. Down in New Mexico, it's the radar installation, because they had all the secret military installations there, so they needed radar in order to detect any intrusion from Russia or any place else. Rocketry, that's where they brought the V-2 rockets after World War II from Nazi Germany. And then, of course, the atomic tests were started there. And that's when, if we have anybody to blame for bringing the aliens here en masse more than they already were here before, we are to blame, because the moment we detonated the first atomic bomb, it sent out an unseen signal throughout the universe. It's almost like a ripple in a pond. You threw the pebble, and the ripples went out. That's exactly what happened in 1945, and UFOs have been here ever since, even more than what they were before 1945. Because sightings go way back to biblical times. There's no doubt about that. Because you read the Bible, you'll find some things that, in the context of UFOs, would be what would be reported as a UFO back in the day if we lived in biblical times, using their terms. So that's why I believe the Roswell crash was one of many. It's the most famous one and more well-known one because of all the civilian witnesses. And like on my Facebook, I have the grandson of Jesse Marcel III, who grew up knowing already that we're not alone in the universe. Wow. To him, it's no big deal that there's other life forms out there. His grandfather brought home some pieces which he showed to Jesse Marcel III's father, Jesse Marcel II. Senior, yeah. And to have lived in that kind of a family would be amazing, because you have no questions after that there's other life forms out there visiting and crashing too, because they're not perfect beings. Yeah. You know, we still claim we have the best jets. Well, I worked at CFB Cold Lake in Alberta, and we were hearing about fissures in the wings of the F-18 fighters. And so we have super advanced supersonic jets, but they're still falling out of the sky because of, metal fatigue or whatever. So UFOs is the same thing. They come here, they encounter all these radar beams sweeping across New Mexico. They may not be prepared for that initially. Maybe they've gotten better by now, so that radar beams don't interfere with them. Solar waves, so solar flares don't affect them. But there's been many more crashes than just the Roswell. It's just made famous because of all the civilian witnesses.
All right, Michel, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Do me a favor. If anything happens within the area that you do research, get a hold of me. We'll get you back on right away.
Definitely, Rob.
Nice talking to you, my friend.
After all these years.
You too, my good friend. Be safe.
You too.
Bye-bye now.
Take care.
X Zone
Bye-bye.
Nation, Michel Deschamps has been our guest, a good friend of the X Zone. His website, noufors.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break at the top of the hour as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, around the world on our number one network, and that's the Starcom Radio Network. And by the way, check out Ed Till Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. Eastern, only on Starcom. My name is Rob McConnell. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Whatever you do, don't go away.